Hi, I am Pratim Ranjan Bose and you are watching Podcast with Pratim, presented by Iravati Research and Communication or IRCC. In this episode, we will discuss developments in Syria and its implications on the world and importantly on India. I have with me Ambassador Sri Anil Trigunayat. He headed Indian missions in Jordan, Libya and Malta and is a storehouse of knowledge on the Middle East. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Sir, let me start with the basics. I'd like to understand what happened in Syria. Is it the last democratic quote unquote act to keep West Asia engaged in war? A Shiite bastion fell to Sunni militants. USA and Turkey support Assad's fall. Russia's economic and geopolitical interests are harmed. So is harmed the interests of Iran and its allies. But while the West welcomed Assad's fall, Israel is pounding the rebels. Does Tel Aviv want a slice? And I haven't spoken that this is coming from the Russia-Ukraine. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much once again to invite me for your very prestigious podcast, I must say. Uh, the factors that you mentioned, in fact, this has been a very unusual combination uh, of various factors that come about at the same time, which can dictate a new kind of a paradigm. As you are aware, that the United States and the West have been wanting to displace Assad as a part of their regime change agenda from 2011 when the Arab Spring happened. And I was ambassador to Libya, and I had seen at the time that the Western countries were trying to send arms, ammunition, and even fighters from Libya to fight in Syria and to create the Free Syrian Army, as they called it. And this sort of a revolution was engineered there. At that time, somehow Assad was able to contain it. And in 2015, when we had the ISIS and Daesh resurgence in the region, at that time the Russians who felt basically cheated in Libya because what happened there was also not authorized in the UN in that way, as everybody acceded. So this time they were more vigilant. Plus, Russians also have their own strategic asset in terms of their Tartus port, which led to Mediterranean and further operations in Africa. So for them, it was a strategic. So they intervened at the invitation, so-called invitation of Assad, come and help. And they, since then, and Iran, of course, has been involved for a long time in the region, but with the presence of the Russians and its air power and the Iranian domestic, the ground support, as well as the support of the Hezbollah fighters, Assad was able to garner or capture more and more territory, which he brought under control. And eventually, the Americans overtly uh, gave away the support to the Free Syrian Army, which felt that they were being let down. Many of them were, of course, Kurds, and the Turkish have their own problem with the Kurds, because Kurdistan they want to make into with all the three from Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. Now, so they consider them as terrorist groups. It's called YPG and the fighting arm, and the PKK as the party. So Turkey has a direct interest in that. They have been pounding it forever. Eventually, in 2020, I think they got some kind of an accommodation with the Russians, and a buffer zone was created, and that continued. Now, at the same time, some of these groups, they like the HTC Hayat, Tahrir al-Sham, as we know now, was basically a Jamaat nusra before that. And before that, it was a part of the ISIS and Al Qaeda, including its leader, Jalali, Jolani, who's, of course, was a fighter all over. And we see that this is something that he has been trying to continue to work. He created a sort of a salvation government in the northwestern part of Lebanon. where they were, running the government. He had a prime minister who has now become the prime minister of the Syria, interim prime minister of Syria. Now, so at this time, what happened is the domestic factors, I would say, mostly domestic factors were responsible because Syria had 90% of the people below poverty line. It has about 13 million internally and externally refugees all over, whether it's in Jordan, whether it's Syria, whether in Lebanon or in Turkey. So there was domestic discontent which was continuing. Plus, he represented an Alawite Shiite minority, which you also referred to, which barely constitute about 10% of the population. And the remaining 10% are Christians, and some 5 to 7% are Druze and others. So it's not a preponderantly Shia country, but it was sort of a minority that was ruling it with the support of others like Iran and others in that sense. So that is a very peculiar situation. Now, Assad has had problems with many countries. United States foremost and the West, the Turkey, in any case, Turkey till the last was trying very hard to meet with him, talk to them. Erdogan tried, his foreign ministers met, and they always told him that you must find a way to work with the opposition and contain the Kurds. And on the other hand, you have Israel, which also felt because Syria is strategically located, especially for Iran, because it was providing arms, ammunition, and everything. So it is a strategic route and connectivity that it provided to Iran for its proxies to be controlled and provided for. And that's Hezbollah and all. Now we have seen that in the recent past, last 1 year, the Hezbollah, the Iran, the Israel and Hamas war for 14 months. Then you had the Israel after that took over, eliminated the leadership of Hezbollah and virtually decimated their strength. On the other hand, the Russia-Ukraine war has been intensifying, continuing, and very uncertain for 3 years nearly. So in that war also, Russia is totally involved. It also withdrew its equipment and forces and manpower from their base, air base, which they have in the region. Now, in that situation, you can imagine, and Iran also has been directly has problems with Iran and Israel between them. So Iran also does not, due to its domestic constraints and external constraints, because both its arms, Hamas and Hezbollah, have been decimated. So the external factors were amenable for these groups to really take the lead. And that is what really explains why these fell like dominoes, all the cities. They started from Idlib under the M5, the major route which goes through it, and then took Aleppo, Homs, and Hama, and then come down to Damascus. It all happened because people wanted that also. That's something very urgent. The Syrian army just did not fight. The Russians were ready to support provided the Syrian army was fighting, but they didn't have it. A lot of them just gave up. Some are still holding some part on the coastal belt, and they will be issue. But in my view, this is just the beginning of the problems of Syria. Although I must admit that even though Jolani is basically has been making right noises, he has been saying that we do not want to avenge anybody, take revenge against anyone. He has given amnesty to the soldiers, whoever wants to join and come and work with him. He approached the ex-prime minister and told him to continue till transition takes place. So they are trying to, and there's been violence has been much less as we have seen in this kind of a very large revolution. So if, as they say, they act on it, then there is a likelihood of Syria getting some respite and some semblance of governance in times to come. But it looks very unlikely to me at this stage. Why? Number one, there are so many domestic factors whose bosses are outside. For example, Syria, Free Syrian Army, that is supported by the Syrian National Army, which is supported by Turkey, the democratic forces, supported by USA, but they formed the Kurdish, and so today only the HTS, which is the main body, has been able to take Deir ez-Zor, which was under the Kurdish, this thing with the help of the Turks. So Turkey has been involved very actively. Turkey wanted the leadership not only of the Islamic world, but in the Middle East, and it is a border. It's their on board border. They are hosting very large number of Syrian refugees as well. So they have opened a border gate for them to border entrances for them to get in these refugees. One thing I must tell you that I have seen in Jordan when I was there were more than 2.1 million Syrians who have been living there as refugees. And there was once a Canadian ambassador organized a meeting and where they were recruiting taking a lot of people from uh, Jordan camps to Canada. You see, we were several ambassadors, and I spoke to many of these Syrians. Everybody said one word: we would not want to go to any country. We want to go back to Syria. While they were having their visa, many of them even refused to go to Canada. You can imagine. So they like their country. They want to come back. So this is what today the euphoria that one is seeing at the ordinary people's level. Ordinary Syrian is happy because he feels he has a hope. But I have been to Libya and have seen what has happened there. We are looking at what is happening in Yemen. We are seeing what's happening in Lebanon. So until and unless there is institutional mechanisms that are protected, a proper transition of power takes place, international community supports rather than divides, it's very difficult to have stability in these kind of violent transitions that take place. Assad had to leave. That was again, but the speed with which all this fell through was something remarkable, and I think that shows that how disgruntled ordinary people were there with Assad regime.
This speed is very comparable to this
Bangladesh
Bangladeshi thing. Uh,
and Afghanistan,
and
Taliban.
before that, Afghanistan. So this is a new import into the thing,
Yes.
whichever way you take it. But just a couple of questions. Number one is, I would just like to understand a little bit. US got more involved following the Russian involvement in Syria. But what was their original grudge against Assad? I mean, why did they go for it?
It is like this, firstly, they still maintain about 900 strong American force in Syria under the garb of fighting the ISIL, which is there. And even while this thing is happening, the Americans have been attacking various hideouts of the ISIS and ISIL, which has been gaining ground in the region. And that would be a cause of worry for everyone going forward. But the basic thing is that the Americans, firstly, the Assad regime was also not liked very much by the Arab countries for the simple reason because he was very close to Iran. And therefore, in 2012, he was expelled from the Arab League by Saudi Arabia. Everybody shunned him. It's only in 2020 onwards, then when, with the help of Russians, he declared complete victory in that the Emiratis, the Saudis, everybody started talking, and in 2023 he took back. So it was the regional geopolitical dynamic, with competition between Iran and Saudi Arabia, between Shia-Sunni, that was also playing out very much there. Why the Americans supported them? For the simple reason that the first, we'll have to go back a little bit in 2010. What happened in Tunisia was really sui generis because people were having a problem. When you have these leaders for 40 years, 42 years, 30 years, they are such dictators that they forget that the people exist, frankly. They think whatever they're doing is the right. So we had Ben Ali there, who was there for 3, 4 decades, and he was again ruling like that. And just a small vendor who burnt himself, immolated himself, created a huge furor on the streets. People came out and they refused to go in. And you can't kill everybody. The French, who are their closest partner, Americans, they treated it as a law and order situation. Within the short time, 21 days, less than 20 days, Ben Ali had to run. He left the country. And this was a successful, mostly peaceful revolution. But then they realized that now the Americans were initially close to Egypt, to Mubarak. They were very close to him. But then the Egyptians were also facing that for so many years, the military rule, which was causing a problem. So they rose up also. And once they rose up, then the Americans abdicated Mubarak. And we saw what happened there. But then Libya, Gaddafi was one leader who has been standing up to the Americans. And so they brought him down, killed him, and everything, whatever happened. We know that. Then come to Saudi, this Syria. Syria, the problem is that he was very close to, from the old times, his father and everybody, they were very close to the Russians. So it was a geopolitical competition between Russia, Iran, and US. And so therefore, they wanted Assad to go. Assad could survive all these 13 years only because of the Russian support. But now today, Russia is not in a position to support them because of its own war. It is embattled there. Iran is also quite significantly reduced in its
And
capacity to penta. So I think all these factors combined and gave the opportunity, and I'm quite sure that the Turks and Americans who've been watching and who had who had embedded themselves rather well, prodded these STS and others to take lead and do it.
so the work will continue. That is a clear indication that what he was giving. So Turkey, you mentioned Turkey and its ambitions, often disproportionate. Now, Turkey is a very interesting case. During COVID, everyone, the European powers, including, primarily France, and they were reducing the bases in Africa. But it was Turkey which was expanding. And Turkey has huge ambitions, and that is where Erdogan has taken the country. So, do you think, and it is not liked by Russia, it is quite a, and it has problems, created many problems for NATO itself. So, where it can head to, and will Turkey get unduly propped up? Will they be very encouraged and go for something more?
You see, we have to grant one thing that Turkey, even though we don't agree with their policies, it's a country which is still harbors ambitions of the Ottoman Empire, and especially Mr. Erdogan himself. He thought of himself. That's why he militarized his diplomacy and foreign policy. What you're mentioning, they're having bases, going and intervening in Libya and elsewhere, different countries. So they continue to do so. They were intervening even in Syria, which is next door for them, actually, the border area. And they have a reason for that. They thought that because this ISIS war gave them an opportunity fighting against the ISIS. Second, the Kurdish rebels who are there, they gave them the opportunity to fight in Syria. And thirdly, the presence of the Syria's closeness to Iran mainly. That was something that gave them. As far as Russia-Turkey relations are concerned, they have had wars, but Turkey and Russia today have an excellent understanding. Turkey, Iran, and Russia, as far as Syria is concerned, work under a format called Astana format or talks. The last meeting of that happened just a few days ago in Doha. They met there, all three of them, and issued statements. So Russia and Turkey are trying to work out some kind of a understanding in a way, even though they have a major, and that is very relevant for Russia in the context of Ukraine war. The Black Sea deal. Turkey
Right,
has
the
been playing a role
connectivity.
as a mediator also. Plus, Turkey is the one country which has refused to impose sanctions on Russia.
Yeah.
And the maximum trade is taking place through Russian trade through Turkey and through UAE. So they are the countries that are there. But at the same time, the ambition is an ambition. And when you get an opportunity, you just capitalize on it. And that's what precisely they have been doing because, see, by doing this, they are taking on a Kurdish population there, which is wanting their own free land and a free country. And secondly, Assad decimated means you have a friendlier regime to yourself there. So they tend to gain in that sense in terms of influence. Certainly, some people say that there could be a gas pipeline that could go through from Qatar to Turkey to Europe, and that was something that was Assad was not doing it because of Iran and Russia. So that is another dimension people gave it. Worrying part is, of course, Israel. Now, Israel has occupied the Golan Heights from 1967 war, and after that, it annexed it in in 2018. And then we see that President Trump, while in his first term, had legalized in his way, saying that Jerusalem belonged to Israel, and so did Golan Heights. You see, this is there. So what has happened now? Golan Heights, there was a after this UN Security Council resolution, there has been a buffer zone. So Israel immediately just took benefit of this kind of a move that is taking place and occupied that buffer zone also, including the tallest mountain there, which is called Mount Hermon. So Mount Hermon gives him the possibility of a 360-degree view and control of movements of both Lebanese and the Syrians. So that gives them a strategic advantage in that sense, apart from the fact that they have decimated completely the whatever little navy the Syrians had or their military arsenal that they had. So in last few days, 4 or 5 days, they have been attacking chemical factories. They say this was a chemical weapons left or whatever arsenal, so that they said they should not fall in the hands of terrorist organizations. So that is a worry for them. Now, today only I was reading that the new regime of this Golani, and apparently somebody told me, I'm not sure, that his name is Golani, comes basically from because he was born in Golan Heights. So he has a clear incentive to eventually try and secure it back, which the Israelis are saying this is an inalienable part of now of Israel. So you are having problem. Then he said that next after Damascus will be a video which is doing the rounds. We will liberate Jerusalem. So if the Israelis feel that they, by doing so, they have bought some kind of a peace, that Saddam is or the Assad is not there, I think that their problems will perhaps increase rather than decrease. On the other hand, for Turkey, for US, everybody, one has to see how the regime is going to play out. It looks like at the moment they are very democratic, they are very open minded. They told the women need not change their dressing because Syrian women have been very modern actually for a long time. It's a civilizational country. So they have issued diktat that nobody will prohibit them from wearing whatever they are doing or something. Similarly, they have told amnesty for everyone, whoever wants to come. So they are not penalizing people unnecessarily or putting them in jail as has happened like in Bangladesh for that matter. So you are seeing it in a bit different context. Then they are not going after the Shias. They have even opened a channel with the Iranians. Iranians have opened a channel with them right now. They're talking to them. So let's see how it eventually, because it's too early days. But going forward, if you think that the chameleon can change colors, but it remains the chameleon. So I think that that is what we'll have to eventually view. If, let's say, the terrorist forces there, like the ISIS, the Al Qaeda, who are already there, if they all get combined thinking and taking, precisely what happened in Afghanistan, the victory of Taliban conveyed a message to all the non-state actors that you can win the state.
Exactly.
That is something that Hezbollah, for example, has been ruling in Lebanon for a long time, having great say in Syria as well. So non-state actors became extremely powerful, emboldened by these victories. So I think the
Exactly. So
situation
we
here
thought,
today is very, yes.
right, we thought that trained or should be stopped at Israel, but now another front has been opened. And you said about, you rightly pointed out that right now they are looking very, very not only moderate, very liberal, dress code and etc., as you said. But it is to be seen that how these Al Qaeda's and ISIS's finally come on. But it clearly what appears to me is that there is a slicing attempt by everyone. Finally, that is the fear that everyone will try to take his slice off from the loot. And sir, a large part of West Asia is now disturbed, from Iraq to Syria. Is there a possibility that this unrest can spill over in the rest of the region?
Well, there is always a possibility of this happening. We have seen it when the Israel-Hamas war started. Uh, Everybody was thinking that there would be a bigger escalation, which will be a problem, and everybody was concerned, including the US. Nobody wants
What is your
that to happen.
realistic take?
Well, my realistic take today is that current people in Syria are not in a position to escalate. Because who's supporting them? Turkey and the US. Turkey is not interested in bigger war. Their economy cannot sustain it. United States, the President Trump is not interested in increasing number of wars. He has openly said that he wants to stop the wars. But the wars happen all the same without even somebody wanting it. We have seen it First World War, Second World War. But in my view, let us say if Russia Ukraine war gets settled, then Russia will have a position where it can once again try to intervene in the region, come back. And if Russia, US find some kind of a modus vivendi, then they will not mind Russia maintaining its bases and everything here. And even these Golani and others have also clearly said that they are not after Russian bases or anything. They can continue. So today these people don't have the full control of the country. First thing for them, now they have to develop a governance model. They're trying to have some ministries, some prime minister, putting, and most of the army of Assad has, I've heard that a lot of them have gone to Iraq. They've run away from here. They're going to Iraq. Their military equipment and everything has been destroyed by the Israelis and the Americans. So at the moment, I think it doesn't look like that because of Syria, you could have a bigger war. Unless, of course, the Arab countries, which have not shown much spine during this past 1.5, 2 years, except big statements, are able to do something, which I don't see and I doubt very much that they will do. So just Syria alone by itself, or let's say even Lebanon is not in a position, they are really begging for peace because they have been stuck between these, mountain and the hard rock. So they are trying to everybody, and Hamas is not in a position anymore to do much. Israel has really decimated them. So Iran, of course, could have done something here which it did not. That was an opportunity for Iran to exert itself, for Russia to exert themselves, but they were limited by their own physicality. So I think that is a bigger problem. So personally, I don't see that the Syrian situation can by itself lead it, but it can definitely lead to a grouping of all these ISIS kind of people or ultra terrorist or extremist groups coming together. That you cannot deny.
So it will be on the burner, but probably you're
Simmering.
not expecting fast escalation, but will be on a slow burner. When that will flare
Yes.
up, we don't know. Sir, just I'd like to end with the bigger thing, that is how the Indian economy is going to be affected. Number one, do you think that the IMEC hopes India Middle East Economic Corridor, is it a lost hope? And
No, I don't see. You see, as far as IMEC is concerned, uh, it's a damn good strategic project and it should happen. But what we are hearing is that India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, the three major players, are continuing with their part of the job. Whatever they have to do, connecting, they are doing it. They continue to have faith in it. Question is the linkages through Syria, Jordan, and uh, through the Israeli port of Haifa. Now, that is something that will be difficult to achieve in the short term. in my view. Because, see, if Saudi Arabia has taken a very strong position now, which was the objective of Hamas eventually, as you know, we had discussed it before. So they have taken a position that till such time that there is a two-state, there is a Palestinian state in a way, a two-state solution is found, no normalization with Israel. Trump will try his level best to do that, try to push that. So if that happens, then your IMEC continues. Then there should not be any problem for us because then everybody is on board. Jordan has a peace treaty with Israel. Syria will not mind that. Saudi Arabia will normalize. UAE already has Abraham Accord. So it could start. That is something, but in the meantime, the good thing is that India, UAE, and Saudi Arabia are completely on board as far as this project is concerned, which is a very important thing. Already, they are our third and fourth largest trading partners.
And in fact,
So it's
very
in any
serious.
case.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
No, I said, in fact, it is not supposed to happen tomorrow. But the fact that this Israel Hamas war, this and that Palestinian issue, and all these, they have complicated the matter. And in my view, have slowed down the progress that was expected.
They added a lot of uncertainties.
Yes.
The region was
Yes.
volatile. Now they added new uncertainties, and uh, hopefully, sometime later, we don't have to discuss about a war in the region with all these guys coming in. Anyway, so
Inshallah.
yeah. So, but you are very right. India, UAE are taking up projects at great speed. The energy corridor, I was surprised to see an advertisement today in Economic Times. I can send you that about the subsea pipeline
Yes.
carrying gas from UAE to from Oman to India and etc. So that's very, very interesting. Things are moving. People are not sitting idle.
For us, it makes ample sense to pitch this one. And I think this was a very good project that the government conceived and worked with the partners who are ready to do that. It's beneficial for them also. But I always say that this we should treat this as a strategic project for us, no doubt. But any uh, of these corridors, uh, we should not compare with BRI or with NSTC all because they are all the ways to take the goods and services along the pipeline and develop the infrastructure. I mean, that is something which benefits all the countries, and I think that we have done good job on that. A good strategic thinking on the part of Indian government.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for giving
Thank
time.
you. Thank you.